Have a blunt conversation about cannabis in the country in a couple of minutes from now. We're going to talk about marijuana as an industry in this country, the kind of jobs it could create and what it could mean for the entire economy. So it could get a bit of a high, if you will, if it just uses marijuana. We all heard that before, haven't we? It estimates that the cannabis industry could inject an awful amount of money into the economy. Now, while doing that, of course, it has to try and create jobs. The use of the plant, though, being decriminalized, but the buying and selling of cannabis, cannabis oil and cannabis seeds remains illegal. If you're confused, don't worry, so am I. So let's try and speak to an expert in this, Sibusiso Dagga from the African Cannabis Advisory Group. Sibusiso, morning, and it's such an important discussion to have because I'm confused as to what we mean when we talk about the use of the plant has been decriminalized, but the buying and selling of the cannabis oil, and the cannabis seeds remains illegal. I thought I could walk into a pharmacy and buy cannabis oil now. Please help me understand.
Sure. Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to your viewers today. So cannabis, in terms of the legal side of the industry, is very confusing. But just to clarify what the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill means versus what we currently have in the industry. So in a nutshell, there's a version of cannabis called cannabidiol, which is non-psychoactive. So in other words, you can't get high from it. So cannabidiol has actually been legal in South Africa since 2019. And so you can find cannabidiol in your Dis-Chems, your Clicks. You can buy it online, provided that it does not have a high concentration of cannabidiol. It sort of sits in this over-the-counter characterization. However, anything that has got high amounts of THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, so what's responsible for making you high, that is very strictly prohibited. However, with the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill, individuals can grow and consume high THC cannabis in a private space, but they cannot trade that cannabis for a means of income. And so don't worry, I think these rules and regulations are still in the works and are extremely confusing to get your head around. But I think the key distinction is the fact that cannabidiol is non-psychoactive and available, and THC is psychoactive and prohibited.
Okay, well, I think of all the people I've spoken to about that, Sibusiso, you've made the most sense and wrapped it up for me very nicely. Now, can we please have a blunt discussion about jobs and the economy? Is this an excuse to start lighting up, or is this really something that can make a difference to our economy, A? And B, will the government really get involved and join you on this?
Sure. So I think to look at the job creation potential of this industry, we have to look at the USA, which is the world leader in terms of in the cannabis industry. So over the last 5 to 7 years, there's been over 325,000 jobs that have been created in cannabis in the US. And this is despite the fact that cannabis in the US is still federally illegal. So states have taken the initiative to legalize cannabis for their for their population, and it is an extremely difficult business to go into because there is no trading of cannabis or movement of cannabis outside those states. So despite all these hurdles, the U.S. cannabis industry has grown tremendously. It's now an $18 billion industry as of 2020, growing and having grown by 50% last year. That is a practical case study that we can look at in terms of how the job creation sort of engine can get kicked.
So give me some numbers, Sibusiso. So give me some numbers for what we could do as an industry. I mean, how much money could we inject? How many jobs could we create with this?
Sure. So the illicit cannabis industry in South Africa is estimated to be about 28 billion. South Africa is one of the top 5 producers of cannabis globally, with almost a quarter of seizures in Europe coming from South Africa. And it's estimated that over 900,000 illicit market growers are currently active in the industry. In terms of a formal and legalized cannabis framework, you've actually got 3 industries. You've got medicinal cannabis, you've got industrial cannabis and materials, where over 50,000 end products can be created in a sustainable manner. Example, substitutes for plastics and textiles and building materials. And then you've got your adult use market. So at a very conservative level, we're talking about a minimum of 25,000 jobs that can be created over the next 3 years, but a significantly higher quantum over 10 years in a mature state. We estimate that this is over 100,000 jobs that can be created should the regulation and the operating environment be conducive.
So let's think about this almost like a cannabis plant. Right now we're dealing with the root issues, if we will. We're hoping this is going to sprout out in leaves and seeds in about a generation or a decade from now. It's going to start growing and producing dividends for us. 3 days of public hearings, I understand, just wrapping up. My last question to you as well. What was the sense of the public hearings? Are we keen to light up? Are we all going to share a joint? Or are we anti-spliff? And then what's going to happen now with the bill? What's our timeline? Last question.
Sure. So it's the bill has been received with sort of mixed, feedback from the industry. I think it's a positive step forward in that individuals can, will be able to consume cannabis. However, the challenge is the spirit of the bill, which still has criminality at its center, and sort of harsh penalties for individuals that, for example, have too much cannabis in their homes and so forth. And so it's very difficult to have a robust, large-scale industry if there's still the sort of demonization of cannabis as a substance. For example, you benchmark cannabis to alcohol, and you see that this bill is significantly more stringent on how cannabis is treated versus alcohol, and that makes it extremely difficult for the industry to strive. So it is encouraging. The National Master Plan is very, very encouraging. However, the devil will be in the detail in terms of whether we set up the sort of right frameworks for us to fully embrace this plant and see the economic and social dividend that it promises.
Well, I appreciate your time. If this gets passed, a joint sitting of Parliament is going to have a very different look to it, won't it? Indeed, joining us this morning, Sibusiso Ngaba, the CEO of the African Cannabis Advisory. So those public hearings having taken place, as well, we'll wait to see what comes of those in a couple of days' time as we wait to see what South Africa wants as far as cannabis is concerned. Still coming.